Hey, welcome to our listeners and our esteemed panel today. We're covering a topic that every business owner asks themselves at some point in time. What should my marketing budget be? It's such a hard question. And how do I determine the right marketing budget for my business? There are lots of opinions out there about what an appropriate marketing budget is for a business, and it often depends upon who you ask that question of. So today, our 4 marketing guides will help unpack this important topic with the goal of helping you answer this important question of what should my marketing budget be? So let's jump in. Paul, why is this such a hard topic?
I think for starters, there are a lot of issues, but a lot of times the marketing budget is like an afterthought. They have their website and they have their internal processes. And then at some point it's like, oh, gee, we need marketing. And they didn't budget for it. So if you don't budget for it from the onset, then you have no budget for it. So then it comes down to how much should I spend? Well, if you just go out there and start Googling, like you said, you'll find you ask 10 questions, you'll get 20 different answers. And there is a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding out there because is your website part of your marketing budget? Or, how do you define that? Or is it part of your operational budget? Like a brick and mortar store, that's a fixed cost. You can consider that part of your operational budget if you require a physical location. But then how do you get traffic to the website? That's going to be marketing, whether it's paid ads, customer reactivation. We've talked about that in the past. And then what do you do once you have leads? Ken, we're on a webinar the other day. It's like, I need leads. Okay, what are you going to do with them? And that's where your marketing automations come in and how you set up those internal processes. And that costs money to set up internal processes. And that's all part of your marketing budget. So part of the reason it's such a difficult topic is because, first of all, how do you define what is and isn't your marketing budget? And then you have to put all those pieces in place, and some of those pieces are going to be internal costs, because if you don't have any internal processes set up, you have to get those set up. And then if you don't have a CRM or any kind of marketing automation software, that's definitely going to be part of it. So there's a lot of moving pieces that can affect what that costs.
If I could just jump in. Yeah, Paul, that was great. I remember when I started my business in 2005, I basically had the luxury of running a business within a business, except I wasn't using my own money and I didn't have to set up all the bank accounts. But, I had to do rate buildups and all this kind of stuff because we were doing bids for federal contracts. So I knew a lot about running a business, but I didn't know everything. So I signed up for some free classes that were offered through a local business incubator. And I was shocked that they don't tell you that marketing is a mandatory thing that you need to have in place. They tell you got to go get a banker, you got to go get an attorney, you got to get HR. They left out marketing, and it blew me away. And I still see that happening today. And it's like, marketing, you can't grow a business without marketing. So what the heck? That's just insanity. So it's one of the most important systems, if not the most important system to run your business, in my opinion, and it is way too often overlooked.
Yeah, I have seen where a lot of businesses, small businesses, they put a lot of time and effort into the operational side. But if you don't have something on the marketing side to feed that operational side, it's not going to take long before you won't need that operational side anymore.
True.
Well said. I think too, if you're a small business owner and you come from maybe the corporate world, you may be, let's say you've come from the corporate world, perhaps not in marketing. Depending on what was going on in marketing for your company there, you may have, a certain view about marketing. I know, and certainly it can feel like the only thing visible could be like, oh, we used to do this at trade shows every year. Like, what's that really worth? And so if folks have only been exposed to some of the, the branding that has happened in a large company, you might just think like, oh, that's all I have to do, and you don't see the inner workings of actually the marketing and sales machine working together. So it could just be, just ignorance in the nicest possible way, just not sure about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've started a small business and you come from a big corporate world, you no longer have that brand recognition to ride on.
You got it.
And that happened. I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean, from my corporate days, I have some very funny kind of viewpoints of other people's viewpoints of marketing. Common phrases that I'd hear are, especially from the tech side, it was like, "Oh, you guys just do smoke and mirrors,"
Oh, you heard so.
Like,
I always heard it was the arts and crafts department.
The arts and crafts, yeah.
Yeah.
But then there were other corporate entities where they truly understood that it's part of the actual, like the success of the business relies on marketing. Can you explain the difference? I love this question. It's actually a question that's come up quite a bit with, in talking with clients and educating. But can you explain the difference between an overhead budget item and an investment budget item, and where marketing falls within these two buckets? I think this is such a necessary part of this discussion.
Yeah. So first of all, semantically, the old government contractor is going to come out in me here, where I had to do a lot of rate buildup.
Did I ask the wrong person this question? Is that
no? But I disagree with the use of the word overhead here.
Yeah.
Marketing is overhead. It is an overhead expense. Is it an investment or is it an expense? That's the real question, I think. And the reason that I'm going down this path is because, too many businesses don't know how to build up their pricing and their rates. And so if your commodity is delivering labor-based services to somebody, you've got the direct labor costs, you've got your benefits costs on top of that. That's usually some type of a percentage of your direct labor, at least it should be. Then you're going to have overhead expenses, and overhead is, the stuff that you have to spend money on to have the business, and then the G&A, the general and administrative, is what it takes to run the business. So there are 4 buckets that you need to think about. So I think marketing does fall in an overhead bucket, but the real essence of your question is should you view it as an expense or should you view it as an investment? I think way too many people view it as an expense. And maybe that's because of the way they've done marketing in the past. If you do a one-off campaign, yeah, it's an expense. I mean, if you go out and you buy billboards and you do it for 2 months and then you don't do anything else and you don't have any integrated strategy, it's not part of a campaign, I would say that that's going to fall toward the expense side of things. If you're doing an integrated marketing strategy that's aligned with the goals and objectives of the business, it's an investment, and it's a necessary investment, and it's a critical investment. As a Business Made Simple coach, we look at 6 elements of the airplane. And it's important enough for us in our business coaching realm to call out marketing as one of those 6 key elements. You've got leadership, which is the cockpit of the airplane. You've got the right wing and the left wing, that's sales and marketing. You've got your products, which are the wings. You've got your fuel tanks, which is your cash flow. And then you've got your overhead, which is, the whole running of the company and the business and stuff like that. And so it really does need to be seen as an investment. And I think the way that Business Made Simple separates it out from the overhead means that you need to treat it differently than many of the other things that you need to do to just literally run the business. Another thing too that I'll say is, it drives me nuts when I talk to business owners who are dropping massive amounts of money paying for rent, and they won't even spend that same amount of money paying for marketing or investing in marketing. And to me, a good rule of thumb is, if you're spending enough money to justify paying a couple of $1,000s for rent every month, you probably ought to be looking at making that same investment. I mean, having that physical space is an investment. It should be. And so I think marketing has to be seen as an investment, but I suspect it's not, because I think most people tend to treat it as one-off, or not most people, but too many people tend to treat marketing as an expense because they buy commodities and they do it one at a time, and it's not part of an integrated whole with a strategy that's aligned with the business goals and objectives.
When you started shaping that answer from a governmental perspective, I was like, no, don't go that way, because truly everything is overhead. But from a corporate standpoint, and from the businesses I work with now, you always understand, or hopefully you always understand, that sales is never looked at as overhead. And if it is, that's a totally wrong way to look at it, because it's an investment in people that can get you more revenue and sales and profit. And if you look at marketing in the same way, I love your analogy from Business Made Simple about the plane, right? If you only have one wing, you're not going very far. Your sales team will not be equipped, and they will not be getting the leads in order to sell to. So
yeah, that plane will glide very well.
It's called a bomb.
Helicopters don't glide well either.
Yeah.
They work on a whole other sort of magical aerodynamic. Jen, what should drive your marketing budget?
The marketing budget. So I will answer your question, but I wanted to kind of jump in on what Ken was saying here. And so all of us on this podcast, we run our own marketing companies, and we sell packages or programs to other businesses so that we do their marketing. So a neat way for a business owner to think about it is hiring out to our type of marketing services can be absolutely something that can fit into the budget in a certain way. So it depends how you're looking at it. So if you think, oh my goodness, okay, are we going to have, because one of the things in considering with marketing and your budget is, do I, as the business owner, go out and do this and get some Google ads and figure all this stuff out? Or do I hire a marketing person to do that for me? And then sometimes the next question is, do we have someone internal? Do I have an employee that can just do all that for me? Would that be the best route to go? Do I hire a marketing manager or a marketing director? And then that comes on to, if you're talking about budget, that comes on under payroll. So that's a whole different set of commitments than it would be to hire an outsourced marketing firm, where it's on a different budget, and it's the kind of thing that can you give 30 days notice? Is it the kind of thing that someone can ramp right up? So within a marketing budget, you have to think about as well, is it going to be an internal hire that you want your marketing to be handled by, or is it going to be an outsourced, or you're going to buy a program or a package from a marketing company? And those can come off different budgets. So you can see in one area of your business, maybe you're capped out. In another area, you can find the money to be able to do that. So when you're looking at your budget, I just want you to make sure that you're thinking also to think, should I bring someone internal to handle all this for me, which might be a great opportunity, or do I hire a firm to do this all for me? And here's a caveat too. Right now, even if you're hiring an A player for a marketing person to come into your organization and handle this all for you, even if they're the best of the best, they can't be doing everything that's needed, right? I mean, in this day and age, you need the lead generation, you need the analytics, you need the graphic design, you need the writing, you need the overall strategy. Like, even if someone is very good at marketing, they're not going to be able to do it all. So you're going to need to go outsourced. You're going to need to have that extra help. As for what should drive your marketing budget, there are certain, I guess, mathematical formulas that you can go by, and one of the tried and true is 5% of sales. Go for that, or for 5% of revenue. What is that? If you take that number, sometimes people freak out about that, right? So, and they freak out because perhaps this is their first time that they're starting to think about what kind of money should I put towards marketing? And 5% of the revenue just feels like so much because they haven't ever done this before. So while that is, maybe a best practice or a number that gets thrown out around there, like, don't freak out about that. It would, if you're starting out and you've never either hired for marketing, spent money on marketing, you're not really sure what to do. I would personally take your revenue for the year and find out where your sales came from last year. What were you doing to get the sales? And how much money was spent doing that? So if you're a small business, was it spent out doing, were you doing a bunch of Zoom trade shows where you had the chance to really talk to potential customers and they came into you that way? How much did it cost for you to go to those shows? Is it the kind of thing that was word of mouth and, referrals? What were you paying back for those referrals if you were doing that? So I guess this is a roundabout way to say that what should your marketing budget be or how to determine it. It's really, I would say the 5% of sales is a place to start, but don't get totally too scared about that.
Yeah, and if I could add something to that too, like you were talking about, where are your sales coming from in the past year? Things like a business, if you take the time to truly understand what the value of a new customer is worth to you, the lifetime value. Not every business has, long-standing clients. Sometimes they're, turn and burn, but for most businesses, there's a lifetime value. You're going to get repeat business from them if you do it well. And if you understand that number, that's really important. If you understand what it costs you to get one of those clients, that's really important. And those help justify your budget as well. Because if you can say, well, if I can grow by this many customers in this coming year and I invest this amount of dollars, that's a good return on investment for my business.
Well, yeah, and you don't have to get all scared of the numbers either. Just a couple of things. So think about business associations. They come up once a year for your annual dues in there. Should you reinvest? Should you reapply for for another membership this year in that business association? Okay, you think about, did any business come your way from it? Were there any introductions from your work or your inclusion in that association? Yes, no. Okay. The newsletter, the amount of time I spend or pay someone to produce my newsletter that goes out every month. Did I get any clients from that? Yes, no. So, this doesn't have to be a huge financial exercise if that's the kind of thing that is scaring you from it. It's just, where are you spending your time? And then last year, where did most of your customers come from? Okay, let's move more in that direction for sure. If you have a budget already set, the best thing to do is really find out what were your sales last year, what was your revenue and your profit, and how did you do compared to the money that you spent? And is it in line with where you want to take your business? So 2 ways to look at it.
And if I could just add to that, Jen, when you're talking about your participation in an association, you need to pay yourself for that time. And that needs to be factored into what your real marketing budget is. If you're, so if you attend 10 hours worth of networking events through the association, that's 10 hours of your time. Put a price tag to that. The cost of joining the association, sure. But a lot of people, I think, completely, and so when they think about looking at a marketing budget, they're forgetting about a whole lot of things. And most of the time they're not paying themselves for the marketing activities that they're doing if they're trying to do them themselves. And that's a real disservice because you're trading time for dollars, and you're ultimately limiting your capability to grow your business or to improve the operations of your business because you can't get out of it. So
Yeah, and Paul, Jen talked a bit about this, but I thought maybe we could dig a little bit deeper on what factors should go into a marketing budget. Like, what things should people be thinking about when they think about a marketing budget, and maybe if there's too much redundancy with what Jen's already said, maybe some things you commonly see that are left out of a marketing budget.
Well, you know, you could almost, when you say what should go into a marketing budget, you could almost say anything that generates leads or engages or re-engages current customers. And that's a very broad topic. And if you look at strategies and tactics or ad spend, or you're going to do paid ads, Jen kind of touched on this, that the marketing agency or an internal person, well, are you going to have if you're going to have a CRM or automation software, and a marketing agency probably already has that in place and can help you with that. Whereas if you hire an internal person, that's not just the end of it. Are you going to buy all this software? Then somebody has to learn how to use that. And that can be a huge learning curve when you get into automations. Conceptually, it can be, well, this is pretty simple. And you know, it's like life's pretty simple till you throw people into the equation, then everything gets screwed up. And it's the same thing with this automation software. Conceptually, it can look like, oh, it's pretty easy to do this, but you know, people don't follow a linear path, and things are going to happen, and you have to try and account for that within those automations, and that's a learning curve. There's things you would never think about, like graphic design. You may need some kind of graphic design capabilities. You're probably going to have to outsource that, and a marketing agency may have that person on staff already. And then content marketing, that has to flow from, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but that has to go through the stages of the funnel. You know, there's this perception a lot of time, because look, money's finite, everybody has a budget. And there's this perception that if people go to my website, they should convert. Well, that doesn't happen, because they may not know you. Maybe they accidentally stumbled across your website and they're like, well, hey, this kind of looks like a reputable company, but I've never heard of them before. And you need that informational content that introduces, and we've talked about this before, having the owner on the homepage have a video about the business and what they do, and you know, what their values are. And then you have to have the informational content, and you have to, you know, like, buy, trust, the whole funnel we've talked about in the past, but you have to guide them through that process. Now, if you're selling a $5 widget, yeah, people may convert pretty easily. If you're selling a $40,000 product, that's going to be a longer sales cycle, and those different types of content are going to be more important. But we could probably do a podcast on that, but yeah, you definitely have to think about all those things. You know, like I said, marketing software and automations. Are you actually better off hiring an internal person as opposed to hiring a marketing? A lot of times people might think it's more expensive to hire a marketing agency, but that may not be the case if you really look into it.
Yeah, I mean, you need somebody to quarterback all of that as well, right? I mean, the graphic design doesn't just get done on its own. I mean, somebody's got to brief in. Same with the writer. Same with in the CRM, if you're building your list, how do you make sure, you know, who gets segmented where? So that it's not just the actual expert that is doing either the writing or the graphic design. Let's stick with that for a sec. Or the software that's going to help all this run. There's quarterback, conductor, whatever you think. There's got to be someone in there making, you know, each element of the machine really work, and understanding how each element of the machine is going to work to support the business's goals. So it's you need either a project manager or some actual person in there. And that's what we see too, right? I mean, it's very easy nowadays to you know, buy some marketing automation software and just think that's a silver bullet. But No, there's a whole bunch of invisible work that has to go on to make this stuff work. And sometimes the business owner is stuck going, I thought if I just hired a marketing person, or I thought if I just hired the writer and the designer, that they just get it done. Well, they'll get what they're focused on done for sure. But what you need is the whole system working for you.
Yeah, maybe it's an existing person that coordinates with the marketing agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a couple of other things I'd like to consider being added to that bucket. One is, we see this all the time. Businesses are sold operational systems that help them run the operations of their business, but they're often told that those are CRMs, and they usually are seriously lacking in marketing capabilities.
They're more like an electronic Rolodex usually.
And even if they are, then chances are nobody in the organization ever learns how to use them. So I think, there's also this role of systems integrator that needs to be in place, because, marketing doesn't just stop at getting the word out. Once somebody becomes a customer, marketing has to continue. Hiring new employees, marketing is now, you need to include marketing in your hiring and recruiting and retention budget. And I think a lot of organizations are starting to realize that right now. And the HR departments classically aren't trained to do this, and most small businesses may not even really have a formal HR department. So this is an area where we're starting to see a lot of people asking us for help as a marketing agency. How do I recruit and retain my employees? But you also have to think about the whole customer retention aspect. What is the customer experience as they're using your products? Are they maintaining loyalty to your business or your brand or your products? And that all should be considered part of what you need to do with marketing. And you've got to get these systems to talk ideally from cradle to grave. I mean, so from the time a lead comes into your system until the time that you've got a really happy, satisfied customer, ideally, the most effective way to do it, if you have the budget and if you're really focused on growth, is to integrate those systems and make sure they work together. Part of that is making sure you pick the right systems.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of marketing companies are going to sell you what's good for them, but not what's necessarily good for you. The operational tool vendors, they're going to sell you what's good for them, not necessarily what's good for you, for your overall business. It may solve a specific problem, don't get me wrong. But, I come from a systems integration background, and I'm amazed. I mean, Paul and I have gotten so many requests this year so far to do this type of work, because people are like, they're finally starting to get it. It's like, in order for me to really be productive, make sure I'm not leaking leads, make sure that I'm retaining happy customers on the other end of the equation, I need to get this stuff all working together.
Yeah, one of the areas we see that the integrations, that conversation pops up the most is related to what I was actually going to add to this conversation was reporting, but it's related to, okay, if somebody comes through this channel, this channel, this channel, and this channel, who becomes first of all, who's a real lead, who becomes a qualified lead, and then who ultimately becomes a customer. And you can't do that without integrating your systems well. But the other side I was going to talk about was reporting. I think too many. This is true about marketers. A lot of marketers leave this off. It's an add-on. They don't necessarily build it into their packages. So one of the things we do is when we first start with a client, we determine what type of reporting do you need that's going to be valuable to you to make decisions. That's ultimately, like, we took over a client from a previous agency. The other agency, I could see they build by the hour. We don't really do that for most of our work. It's all included. And so I was able to see what they were billing by the hour for each month. And they had a 12-hour reporting bill every single month. And I just thought, well,
Wow.
Mr. Client, like, what value is 12 hours of reporting truly bringing to you? They gave you lots of reports. Did you ever read the reports? Does it matter to you? So I think that's really important to take into account as well, that that should be part of your marketing budget. If your people have to do it, that's something to be included. If it's the agency doing it, then make sure that's not overlooked, because that's what will tell you if your marketing's working.
At the same time, don't get fooled by sexy looking reporting dashboards. I'm amazed how many people wind up making a marketing decision on who they're going to hire based on how cool they think a marketing dashboard looks, without even thinking about what the marketing dashboard's telling them. So that's a real problem in our industry. There are these large vendors, national chains, national vendors in the US, I would assume in Canada as well, that have these great looking, really cool reporting dashboards. Who cares? What they're reporting on is not very helpful.
I
So
love colorful charts. They're so pretty.
yeah, they are pretty, but don't be fooled by, just because they're pretty doesn't mean they have usefulness.
That's true. Ken, you talked a little bit about associations before, but I think this is really important, because this is what data often gets influenced into conversations when I talk with clients about budget. But industry associations often share, in fact, I haven't come across an industry association that does not share annual average marketing spends for their constituents. How is this kind of information gathered? And is this a good number to use when determining your own budget, or why not?
Well, I do think it is self-reported. I think there are industry surveys that are done out there. Either the association does it or they pay somebody to do it. So, and it's, I don't know how useful they are. I mean, there's certainly some utility there, if you don't have a clue where to start. But what I think is probably more important is, every industry is different. Every business is different. You've got to figure out what are your business goals and objectives. And, I pick on this guy a lot as an example, but he's a perfect example. I mean, he's got a great business. It's him and his sons, and they provide a service, and they can only handle so much business. They'd like to keep their calendar full, but their main go-to-market strategy is referral-based marketing. And so, their marketing budget doesn't have to be big, because their objective isn't to grow. It's just to keep themselves really busy. And so you've got to think about what are you trying to accomplish. You've also got to look at the competition levels in your market. I did a report the other day for a prospect in the water damage restoration business here in St. Louis.
Super competitive market, right?
I ran a report of Google ads, and I found at any given hour of any given day for water damage restoration, or related keywords, there were 63 people running ads at any given hour, 50 to 63 in any given hour. So you need to know how competitive your market is, and that's going to have to dictate your marketing budget.
Those clicks, those could be $40 to $60 a click.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
And people don't stop to think about that.
Not only is it hyper competitive, it's also very expensive click wise. And we know that there are other industries, personal injury attorneys, are very much that same way. If you're in a unique or a niche, for example, or you're in a niche or an industry that hasn't really embraced digital marketing yet. In some cases, where we find that painters in many markets don't have to have huge marketing investments to be able to generate really great quality online leads and build up a really quality online presence. You have to look at we've put together, we've got a marketing calendar, calculator that we've probably all, taken a look at one point or the other. And I think it's a really helpful tool, because you plug in, what's your monthly marketing spend investment? Is it, how much in ads, how much in getting products or services or marketing costs? And then you look at what is your average price that you sell. And then you look at, what is your profit margin? And sadly enough, I think a lot of businesses have no clue what their profit margin is for
Mhm.
everything that they sell. And then, you calculate that, how many do I need to sell to pay for my marketing? Because you should be able to generate more sales with your marketing to pay for itself. So and if you calculate that out and the numbers are off, then is going to give you a guide on how you need to dial in or up your marketing expense. But I think, it depends. If you're trying to get your business positioned to sell in the future, you might need to increase your marketing budget, one, to generate more business and get more customers, because that usually adds to the valuation of the company. But two, you might want to formalize your marketing systems, because again, systems and having systems in place that are transferable is an investment, and it's going to increase the sale value of your company. So, if you're just starting out, your marketing budget's going to be a much bigger percentage of your total budget, because you have no business, you have no sales. So of course it's going to be skewed. But if you've already been in business for several years, you might have more of a 2 to 5% range. Getting started as a business, you might need to factor in 10 to 20%, depending on what it is you sell and how competitive it is, and those kinds of things. And I don't know. I mean, there's no simple answer, but I think that's why you need to talk to somebody who deeply understands marketing and what the opportunities that marketing can bring to the business.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that always stands out to me about association percentages and percentages in total, because I think it's actually businesses need to reframe the conversation. I don't think it's about percentages. I think it's about if you spend, this is where that investment versus expense or overhead conversation comes in. If you spend $15,000 in marketing, what's it bringing in? If it brings in $2 million worth of business for you, would you not want to spend $15,000 more? Right? Like, so to me, it's not even a percentage. That I think that's even the wrong conversation. I think it's a
Mm.
starting point.
Yeah.
But the other side of that equation too, that I find deeply troubling, that people take it at face value, because I've heard in the dentistry industry, some associations say, well, the average dentist office spends 1.5% of their revenue. And so if you calculate a $1 million $1 million dental office per year, they're spending $15,000 on marketing. Like, it doesn't, it, my understanding of the business, that would never work,
Yeah.
because they're containing in that average number people that spend nothing, people that are declining, and then you have the high growth people. And it's actually the businesses, like if we take the 80/20 rule into account for this, do I want to be with the 80% that are maybe not doing great or maybe are truly average, or do I want to position my business for high growth with the other 20%? And if you ask any business owner, unless they're in a lifestyle business or they're kind of sunsetting out, they want to be in high growth mode. They don't, they're investing a lot of their time, energy, and money into this enterprise, and they want high growth. At least the businesses I tend to work with.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, it really has to be aligned with your business goals and objectives. And if you
Yeah.
don't know what those are, you need to start there. And that's why we always talk about strategy first, because, using the formulaic approach, you know, I don't know this for a fact, but this is my, and I'll probably piss some people off by saying this, but this is my impression of a lot of people in a particular industry. And I'm not going to say the industry, because I don't want to get any hate mail. But I think there's a mentality. It's like they're told you need to spend X percent, and that's just kind of drilled into them. You do this. Here's how much you need to spend in marketing. So they go out and they buy commodities,
Mm.
to fill up that marketing budget. So yeah, they're hitting the marketing budget goal that they were told, but they're buying it piecemeal as a commodity and not strategically and not as an investment. So it drives me nuts. Um, it's so sad and so frustrating.
Well,
But
I was going to jump in on your driving me nuts. What drives me nuts is so we've worked with
Just let it out, everybody.
companies. Yes, marketing therapy, right?
yeah,
What drives? So I have heard all the way from we have worked with, I guess, solo consultants all the way up to quite literally, a Fortune 50 company, and at each level, there's been well, we're only an X person company. Or I'm only a 1-person company. I'm only a 200-person company. I'm only a 60 million. There's always this resistance about
yeah,
what we are, right? So that's kind of nutty as well on that
yeah.
side. The other nutty part is we'll give you a little bit and we'll see how that goes. And then we'll give you more but imagine if you did that with anything, right? You bring a new little puppy home. Okay. We'll give you a little bit of food to see how you're growing. And then we'll give you what you need once you know what I mean? So there's something to be said about you have to give the engine, the right fuel in order to show you what it can do. So there's that where I feel sometimes where we've got one hand tied behind our back trying to prove what we can do with this little morsel of budget, where if you just, release something reasonable, we could really show you what could happen.
And there are a lot of times I'll tell somebody, if this is all you've got, hang on to it, save it, so that you can do something serious with it. Because whatever you're going to buy with this amount of money, you are not going to be happy with the results. So work on building up a nest egg, saving this, look at some maybe more cost-effective things like referral marketing or this or that, but to invest in pay-per-click ads or SEO campaigns. These aren't $150 kind of things for page 1 rankings.
Yeah. Jen, I think you led into this a little bit, but how would a business owner go about determining the right marketing budget to achieve their growth goals?
Their growth goals. Okay.
Yeah.
So on that, so I'll answer that, but I just want to segue a little bit to if there's any kind of, I guess, hesitation around how much money to spend, around the idea of putting forth an investment before you kind of reap the rewards. Do yourself a favor and go talk to 3 to 5 very good salespeople within your industry, because salespeople will be the first to tell you. They're the ones that know you got to put out either the phone calls or the emails or the meetings or the presentations in order to get some sales coming in. So they certainly understand the putting out of energy and the putting out of money in order to achieve your goals on the back end. So if you're concerned about how is that going to work, just really talking to anyone in sales, it can be a good sounding board, because if they're not putting out the energy, making those calls, having those meetings, how are they ever going to get and be able to close an X percentage of sales? And that's the way you got to look at your business. So I think sort of having that conversation with folks that are out there getting the rejection every day can be a really good, a sounding board, but a really good reality check to, okay, we got to chop the wood and build the fire first before we get the warmth. And although that sounds very obvious, we as humans, I don't know, we always kind of freak out when it has to do with money. Right. Yeah. Anything else, we're like, okay, no problem. We're going to put some effort into this relationship or effort into this. But when it has to do with money, we kind of always want to see the results before we're willing to open the checkbook a little bit more. So, but back to your real question. And this would be a question based on, we're already growing. So what have we done last year or last quarter? How much do we want to grow? And then putting the money towards that. I would also say that within marketing, I guess this happens in other industries, but our industry is one of them that it's moving fast, And some of the things that we joke about or make fun of actually become viable channels for your business. I mean, you can just go back a few years. How many companies were joking around about, social media not being real? How many, I was around when the web first started, and there were so many jokes and just, why would we want to put our business on the web, right? So
I don't need a website.
I don't need a website. I don't need
It's
a
just a
telephone.
passing trend.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we can joke about that, but
Yeah.
that's happening every day. So, yeah, you have to put some money aside for some experimentation because, the marketing world is moving so fast, and what you may be turning your nose up now is actually a viable channel, next quarter. So,
A perfect example is Meta, Facebook, reported the first time ever decrease in number of users.
I'm one of them.
Those users went to TikTok. And TikTok, a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that TikTok has eclipsed Google in terms of the most visited website. So, we've made fun of TikTok in the past. It's got to be the right fit, but it's an emerging channel that you need to pay attention to. I'm not prepared to say that it's right for most businesses, but certain businesses absolutely. And so you're exactly right, Jen. I mean, these trends change a lot, and they can change really fast.
Yeah, and just to clarify that stat, because I looked into that when I saw that, and it's a misleading stat. It
Okay.
has to do with not the volume of usage, but the actual time spent on it. Because once you're into a flow of TikTok, you're flowing TikTok, right? So
Right.
I think
no
those
getting
stats can.
out.
So it's still an amazing stat. It's just I think it's important that because I dig into stats all the time, right? Because I find them so misleading sometimes. But
Oh, but what that state basically telling you is, if you want to try to catch somebody in a place where they're already going,
yeah, if they're the
TikTok
right audience, yeah,
TikTok is a viable channel for a
for sure,
lot of people and a
for
lot of
sure.
businesses.
I think it will continue to be so. And
because you're the tip of the
it actually
iceberg,
could
Paul.
surpass Facebook. I mean, because right now we're looking at TikTok as it is. And I was reading an article a while back about how their advertising is an advertising platform. It's just not quite there. It's not mature. You think that's going to stay that way with all the money that they can make from people advertising? They're going to get that fixed.
Maybe.
Yeah, and interestingly
Twitter,
enough,
Twitter
none of
never
the other
really figured out the
channels.
whole advertising thing. I mean, Twitter dominated in 2008.
Yeah.
It was the emergent social media giant, and they couldn't figure out how to translate that into advertising sales. LinkedIn struggles, with that as well. And LinkedIn has all of the things for B2B type businesses that should be perfect, but it doesn't work.
Well, it works for some businesses, but yeah, and
Not as
each
well
of
as it
these
should.
channels are working really, really hard to get people's dollars, right? Like
Yeah.
Facebook is verging onto the TikTok side, and Twitter is verging onto the other. It's competition is real, folks. And that's why you need a marketing budget. So as we wrap up, I'll open this up to all of my esteemed colleagues here. Are there any other factors or considerations or just tips that you want to share as we wrap up this topic?
No.
The last thing I would add is I really liked, Jen, when you were talking about the consideration of hiring salespeople and what they can do for your business. I see such a strong parallel there, that I think the understanding, if a business can wrap their head around the understanding that marketing, in the same way that a salesperson can generate exponential results for your business. They can pull in a lot of revenue for you. In the same way, you should be considering marketing like that, because it as you invest in, if you invest a little in a poor salesperson, you're going to get poor results. You will get some results, but they may not be great. If you invest a lot in a really strong salesperson that understands your industry and your target audience, you'll get great results. And in the same way, you'll see that with a marketing budget well spent, right? Like the parallel was just so clear to me at that moment when you said those words.
Oh, how about that? So insightful. Well, the thing is too, I mean, with your marketing, so if marketing will bring you to the door, the salesperson, opens the door, invites you in, and, makes you feel at home. But the thing is, it's funny in our industry. They're so like marketing and sales sometimes go like this, but instead we got to work together a lot more for sure, because all of the, a lot of the detail orientedness and the exact, branding and the exact copywriting and, the exact, counting of the leads and that kind of thing. I mean, it's very marketing focused, and most salespeople are just like, let me go ahead and talk to someone, get some money. So, I mean, they're yin and yang working really well together for sure.
But
although if you ask any sales guy how many sales he brought in a month, he can tell you without even looking at his computer or anything, right? Like they're dialed in because that's what they're that's how they get paid.
Yeah.
But there are also industries where the salespeople aren't. I mean, they're not separate, distinct type people. I'm thinking of like restaurants or boutiques. I mean, every server is the salesperson. Every person who runs the cashier is the salesperson, because that's where you have a natural opportunity to upsell. Would you like dessert with that, or would you like fries with that, kind of a thing, but they don't have salespeople that go out there that are trying to meet specific. I mean, I'm sure that I know that they have quotas that they're trying, and incentives, if you get this many extra desserts sold and stuff like that. In some places they do that, but they're not the classic separate pure sales function. They're multi-purposed. And so, in that case, your marketing budget may need to be radically different than what you would invest in from a salesperson perspective, because your marketing probably plays a big role in being that sales engine, because you don't have a chance to do business unless you're getting people in the door.
Right. And you have to do something bad to lose the business once they're in your door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I made any sense there, but it's interesting. I mean, there are different dynamics, in different businesses that you have to kind of take into account.
For sure. Well, this is a good place to wrap up, everyone. I think if I were asked to encapsulate this whole discussion today, I'd say that your marketing budget should be whatever is required to get your business growth goals, get you to your business growth goals any less, and you won't achieve them, right? Like you have to start thinking that way. And there are lots of factors, but it doesn't have to be super complex. I think that was made clear here today. And make sure you create a marketing budget and start investing in good marketing. So thank you for joining us today for this marketing topic. If this has been helpful to you, please share the wealth with others by telling them about this podcast, and we hope to see you next week.
See you.